Welcome back to Proxy, everybody, and today we are going to be going over the fully leaked Aeldari Codex. Yes, that's right, guys. The full codex has leaked, and we are going to dive right in. Now, I have read this ahead of time, so I do know what's in it. My God, guys, I think we just got the best codex in the entire game. I think this is by far the best release. We have the coolest rules, and we have the best units. And I'm not even kidding when I say that. And you know I like to exaggerate a little bit sometimes, but guys, I think this is probably the best codex release of 10th edition. And I'm not saying it's OP, I'm just saying that our units have some of the coolest rules, and we basically got everything we asked for. GW listened to us, and we got exactly what we needed. So let's go ahead and dive right into it. And some of these things are a little hard to see, but I have a close-up of it, so I will read it out to you if you can't see it for whatever reason. And yes, so let's go ahead and dive right in and start. So the first thing is battle focus. We already talked about this. There's not much to say about it as far as, what else is in it and stuff like that. We have the agile maneuvers. Swift as the wind, we can add 2 to our movement characteristic. Flitting shadows, we can become immune to Overwatch. Star engines is on a vehicle that can move d6 plus 1, further than it normally could without having to, advance and stuff like that. Just add that much to your movement value. We have sudden strike, which allows us to consolidate up to 6 inches instead of 3, and pile in up to 6. Opportunity seized, we can, of course, move d6 plus 1 after an enemy unit falls back from us. And fade back allows us to move back d6 plus 1 after being shot at. Now, the disparate paths special rule is as follows. We were wondering about this. When mustering your army, you can include Harlequin units in your army, even though they do not have the Azuriani faction keyword. Unless otherwise stated, you cannot select Harlequins or Ynnari as your army faction. Now, if we go back to battle focus, it says if your army faction is Azuriani, at the start of the battle round, you receive that many tokens. And yes, Harlequins do benefit from battle focus, right? Because even though the army faction is Azuriani, Harlequins have their own keyword and stuff. They have the battle focus special rules, so they can use it. Your army is always counted as Azuriani. That's it, right? So Ynnari units can use this. Harlequin units can use this. It's confirmed. Everybody can use it, except for things that don't have the battle focus special rule, which are going to be Wraith Guard and Wraith Lords and stuff like that. So now that we've gone over that, let's take a look at the next page, which is the Warhost detachment. This is the basic detachment everyone gets, and it's just good, guys. It's just solid all around. It's a great army detachment for those of you who don't want to particularly skew your army in any one direction. So let's read this. First is Martial Grace. At the start of the battle round, you receive 1 additional battle focus token, which is massive. So instead of 4, you get 5. Each time each time a unit from your army performs Swift as the Wind agile maneuver. Until the end of the phase, add an additional 1 inch to the move characteristic models in that unit. So instead of plus 2 inches, you're getting plus 3 inches. That's pretty big. And then lastly, each time a unit from your army performs an agile maneuver that involves rolling a d6, so that's that fallback one and the shoot one, right, the reactive moves, add 1 to the result. So if you guys want better odds for your, reactive moves, there you go. This is the detachment for you. Very good. As far as the enhancements, we got some classics. We got the Phoenix Gem, 2+ revive with full wounds remaining, so it's still great. Timeless Strategist. At the start of the battle round, if the bear is on the battlefield, you can receive 1 extra battle focus token. There you go. So instead of 5, you're going to get 6 now, which is great. Gift of Foresight. Once per battle round, you can target the bear's unit with the command reroll stratagem for 0 CP. Well, I think that's okay, right? That's pretty good. I would definitely take that on a unit of Guardians or a Farseer or something like that, right? So you can re-roll your, hit roll or your wound roll or whatever That's a really good ability. And oftentimes you don't use the command reroll anyway, so this is a great way to get it for free. And then Psychic Destroyer, add 1 to the damage characteristic of ranged psychic weapons equipped by the bearer. I think that's probably the worst one out of the bunch, but if it's cheap, it's still pretty good. We do have point values as well, so we're going to have to take a look at that. But yeah, it's good for a Farseer. And, obviously a Farseer with, instead of, damage D3 Eldritch Storm, we have D3 plus 1 Eldritch Storm, which is pretty cool. As far as the stratagems go, they're also still really good. We have lightning fast reactions, which is the same as before. Your shooting or fight phase, just after an enemy unit selects its targets. You just can't target Wraith constructs, but you can target everything else. It works exactly the same way. Skyborn Sanctuary is insane, guys. So you guys were worried about Eldar not having, big boy fire and fade and stuff like that, and Phantasm. Well, this allows you at the end of the fight phase to have an Ozerani unit from your army jump back into a transport if that unit is within 6 inches of it. And by the way, Wave Serpents, guys, got a buff. So Wave Serpents are way better now. So and Falcons are the same. So we're going to see some, mechanized lists for sure. This is a great strat for keeping your army alive. We have Feigned Retreat, which is just, fall back, shoot, and charge, which is fantastic. We have Blitzing Firepower, which gives a unit sustained hits 1 if they're within 12 inches of an enemy unit. And if the unit already has sustained hits 1, then you score the critical hit on a 5+. So you get sustained hits 1 on a 5. So there's a lot of units out there, like units with scatter lasers, for example. So scatter bikes might be a thing again. You're now critting on 5s. I still think the shuriken cannons are probably better, but sustained hits 1 is really good. And you can throw this on a unit of jet bikes with shuriken cannons and get sustained hits 1 and lethal hits as well. We do still have Fire and Fade, but it is only 1 CP now, but the effect is less. It's just after an infantry unit from your army has shot. It does exclude aircraft, Zerman, and Wraith construct units, unfortunately. And that unit can make a normal move up to D6 plus 1. And you can't charge after. I think this is fine. They got rid of a lot of the just, you get to move this much in the army. Fire and Fade is still good with infantry. And it looks like Fire Prisms, guys, are going to have to rely on the agile maneuver fade back to be able to survive shooting. It's still fine. I think we'll talk about Fire Prisms later. I think they were one of the unfortunate souls who got a little bit nerfed, but, I don't think they're terrible. Let's just put it that way. I just think that they're a lot worse than before. All right, and lastly, we have Webway Tunnel. End of the opponent's fight phase, 1 Ozerani infantry unit from your army that is wholly within 9 of the battlefield edges, you can go back into strategic reserve. There you go. So Warhost is a pretty awesome detachment all around. It's a good all-rounder, and it looks like there's a lot of cool stuff for synergies with vehicles. You got some synergy there. You got some synergy with your models being able to move farther with their agile maneuvers, and you have some really good enhancements as well. So this is a good all-round one that's good for basically the whole army. And a lot of the stratagems are just general stratagems that are pretty powerful. So let's go ahead and look at the next one, which is the Windrider host. I was looking forward to this. So, detachment rule, ride the wind. In the declare battle formation step, you can set up Ozerani mounted and Viper units from your army in reserves during the battle. Such units can be set up on the battlefield as if they were arriving from strategic reserve. For the purposes of setting up Ozerani mounted or Viper units from your army on the battlefield, treat the current battle round number as being 1 higher than it actually is, which is really good. This means that on turn 2, you can come in from behind your opponent, which is awesome. That's really, really good. That's really powerful. In addition, at the end of your opponent's turn, you can select a number of Ozerani mounted or Viper units from your army, excluding those within engagement range of enemy units. Then remove those units from the battlefield and place them into strat reserve. And the maximum number of units you can do this with is as follows. And you're going to be usually doing a strike force, so that's 2 units. So that's basically the Grey Knight ability. But instead of with 3 units, it's with 2 units. That's awesome. That's really good. And then Windriders also gain the battle line keyword. So guys, you can run up to, now Windriders did get reduced in squad size to 6, but you can run a bunch of Rangers. You can run up to 36, or excuse me, Windriders. You can run up to 36 Windriders in your army, which is really insanely strong. So that's awesome. Also, realistically, I think this is going to do better with MSU anyway. So it's not a big deal if they're reduced in squad size. Let's look at the enhancements. First drawn blade, Aeldari mounted model only. The models in the Bearers unit have the Scouts 9 ability. That's fantastic, right? You got a Scouting 9 unit of, or, Scout 9 unit of 6 Windriders. That is amazing. We have the Mirage Field, which gives you basically -1 to the hit roll. So it gives your whole unit stealth, but permanently, right? Which is awesome. We have the Seer Sight Strike, which gives a mounted Psyker model anti-monster 2+, anti-vehicle 2+ on the psychic weapons. I think this sucks. It's horrible, but it's funny. So there you go. Echoes of Uthlanesh, Ozerani mounted model only. In your command phase, roll 1d6, adding 1 to the result of the bearers not in your deployment zone, adding 1 to the result as well if your bearer is within your opponent's deployment zone. On a 5+, you gain 1 CP. So if you're in your opponent's deployment zone at the, in your command phase, you roll a dice and you gain a CP. I think that's okay. I mean, it does work off the battlefield as well. It's just going to be on a 5+. So that's not bad. CP for, you're probably not going to run Eldrad in a list like this. You're probably going to need some sort of CP generation. So that's pretty good. Then we have our stratagem. So Death from on high, your shooting phase or fight phase, 1 Azuriani mounted or Viper unit from your army that has been set up on the battlefield from reserves. Until the end of the phase, each time a model in that unit makes an attack, you can re-roll the wound roll. So guys, just full rerolls to wound on your units of Vipers and Windriders. That's really powerful. Overflight, your shooting phase or fight phase, just after a mounted unit from your army destroys an enemy unit, that unit gets to make a normal move of up to 7 inches, which is really good as well. So if you were worried about your units not being able to kind of, fall back, now they can. They just have to kill something, which does make sense. Wind of Blades, your movement phase, 1 mounted or Viper unit until the end of the phase, or end of the turn, your unit is eligible to shoot and declare charge in a turn which it fell back or advanced. So that means Shining Spears now have a stratagem for advance and charge, which is awesome. So they can move, advance, shoot, and then charge, and then Shining Spears have charge through walls now. So they can move through terrain features, and they can, because they have fly, they can just fly over enemy models. Shining Spears are the shit now, and especially in this detachment. Daring Riders, the reinforcement step of your movement phase, 1 mounted or Viper unit in your army and reserves. And this one is basically just a 3-inch deep strike kind of, or a 3-inch reserve move, just kind of like 3-inch deep strike, but from reserves. This will be nerfed to 6 inches because of the Pry Nexus rulings. But, it's still good, right? I can come within 6 inches of you, and that's still pretty decent. Focus Firepower, your shooting phase, 1 mounted unit or Viper unit until the end of the phase. Each time a model in your unit makes an attack, improve the armor penetration characteristic of that attack by 1. That's super good as well. And that's really good on things like Shining Spears. Shining Spears are looking really hot, guys. Really hot. Because -1 additional AP on their laser lances is powerful. Lastly, we have Spiraling Evasion. Your opponent's shooting phase just after an enemy unit has selected its targets. You can select a mounted or Viper unit from your army that was the, kind of target of those attacks, and models in your unit have a 4+ invulnerable save. So this is really good too, and especially on Shining Spears, because they did lose their 4+ invulnerable, but now they're kind of gaining it back with a stratagem. So yeah, guys, this is really strong. I don't know what else to say about this. Really powerful detachment for Windriders and mounted units. Vipers are better now. You can take them in squads of 2. They have arguably arguably a better rule as well. So that's also very awesome. Okay, that's the Windrider host. Let us move on to the Seer Council. So we went over a lot of these, so we won't go over everything. But Strands of Fate looks like you're getting more dice than they said. So I think this just got... I think when they wrote the article, they nerfed it. Because as of now, the dice numbers are a little different. You're getting 6 dice instead of 4 dice. I think that will change. Personally, I think that will get nerfed. But that's okay. That's the detachment rule, basically the same. Then the enhancements, you have the Lucid Eye. We talked about that you can get a +1 or a -1 on your fate dice pool to, manipulate what stratagems are less CP. We have the Runes of Warding, which gives basically a Psyker model, and the models in the unit feel no pain 4+ against mortal wounds, psychic attacks, and critical wounds caused by attacks with devastating wounds ability. Honestly, that's pretty good. But the only thing I would say is that who's going to target Guardians with mortal wounds on purpose, right? So I think warding runes is just okay, but it's interesting. And it's definitely something to think about taking if it's cheap. Then you have the Stone of Eldritch Fury. Add 12 inches to the range characteristic of psychic weapons equipped by the bearer. Not great. Not great, but, again, they can't all be winners here. Torque of Morag Hague, we talked about this. This is basically a Vect ability that increases the CP cost of a stratagem by 1 within 12 inches of the bearer of an enemy stratagem. Okay, let's read the stratagems because they are good. Prescient of the Dead. Of the Dread, sorry. Command phase, 1 Azuriani Psyker model from your army. Select 1 enemy unit within 18 and visible to the model. The model must take a battle shock test, subtracting 1 from the test. That's actually not bad because it can prevent opponents from using stratagems. So that's actually pretty good to have in your back pocket. You're not going to always want to use it, but it's useful because it also happens in the command phase. It's not just your command phase. So you can actually use this to prevent an enemy from scoring an objective. It's a risk. They have to roll a test, but it's still really powerful because it doesn't mention that it's in your command phase. It could also be in your opponent's command phase. It could also be in your own command phase if you need an objective really badly. This is amazing, guys. I really like that stratagem a lot. Forewarned is the next one. It's in your fight phase just after an enemy unit has selected its targets. 1 Azuriani infantry unit from your army, excluding rates, that was selected as the target of 1 more attacks and is within 9 of a Psyker model in your army. Till the end of the phase, subtract 1 from the hit roll and subtract 1 from the wound roll. That's really strong, guys, for just 1 CP. -1 to hit and -1 to wound. It does have to be infantry, though, but that's still really good. Unshrouded Truth. It's in your movement phase. You target an infantry unit within 9 inches of a Psyker model. You remove I think we already talked about this, but basically you remove your unit from the battlefield and then place it 9 inches wherever you want. So that's really good. You have Fate Inescapable. It's 1 Azuriani infantry unit from your army, excluding rates, and within 9 inches of a Psyker model in your shooting phase. The effect is your models gain ignores cover, and each time a model in your unit makes an attack on a critical wound, improve the armor penetration characteristic of that attack by 1. So that's pretty decent. It's basically Blade Storm, but instead it's just ignores cover, and critical wounds are at AP -1 instead of AP -2. Not the best, but honestly, ignores cover is great for 1 CP, I think. Then we have Ish's Fury. Your opponent's movement phase, just after an opponent makes a normal move, advance, or fallback, you choose 1 Azuriani Psychic model from your army within 9 inches of that enemy unit. You roll 66 for each 3+, they suffer a mortal wound. And that is pretty good, guys. You're rolling 6 dice on a 3-up, so you're getting 4 mortal wounds against your opponent, and in some cases, if you get lucky, you'll get all 6. That's pretty insane. So I think that's awesome. That's an awesome stratagem. If you move within 9 inches of my Psyker, I'm going to blast you with mortal wounds. This is really good against characters that like to deep strike behind your lines, right? because now there's a good chance that character can actually die from this. And then lastly, we have Psychic Shield, which is 18-inch lone op for an infantry unit after your opponent shoots it, which is really powerful as well. So Seer Council's looking good also. Seer Council's looking like a really good kind of control list. We're going to have a lot of Guardian units, Seer Councils, you know, and Psyker units in general, being able to kind of come together and prevent your enemy from doing a lot of the things they want to do. So I think this is a really powerful detachment. And it's definitely one of those denial detachments because of the first stratagem, Presentiment of the Dread. It's going to really be hard for your opponent to score primary victory points. So if you were ever looking for a detachment that is heavy on denial of points, this is it. Okay, let's move on to the next one. Spirit Conclave. This is the Wraith one. So we have Shepherds of the Dead. So each time a Psyker model, I'm just going to say Psyker model. We know it's Ozerani, so from now on I'll just say that to kind of, you know, make it a little easier on all of us. So each time a Psyker model is destroyed by an enemy unit, that enemy unit gains a Vengeful Dead token. Each time a Wraith Construct model from your army makes an attack that targets a unit with a Vengeful Dead token, add 1 to the hit roll and add 1 to the wound roll. So they basically just became Leagues of Votann. That's really strong. And Psyker models from your army have the following ability. Spirit Guides. While within 12 inches of a Wraith Blade, Wraith Guard, or Wraith Lord model, that unit has the Battle Focus ability, which is, oh my god, guys, Battle Focus with Wraiths now is really strong as well. So we got a really good ability. We got 2 really good abilities. And that's not all. Wraith Blades and Wraith Guard are now battle lines, so you can take more Wraith Guard and more Wraith Blades. Let's look at the enhancements here. Enhancements, Light of Clarity is the first one. Spirit Seer model only. In your command phase, select 1 friendly Wraith construct within 12. Until the start of your next command phase, add 1 to the objective control characteristic of infantry models in the unit. Add 3 to the objective characteristic of monster models in that unit. That is good as well, because that can flip an objective in your favor, and then you can score on it. That's amazing. We have the Staff of Kurnos. You select 1 friendly Wraith construct within 12. Until the start of your next command phase, each time a model in that unit makes an attack on a critical wound, that attack has the precision ability. Guys, that's really good as well, because Wraith Cannons have devastating wounds. So that's actually really strong to kill characters. That's a good one. Rune of Mists is the next one. Spirit Seer model only. In your command phase, select 1 friendly Wraith construct unit within 12 of the bearer. Until the start of your next command phase, each time a range attack targets that unit, unless the attacking models within 18, models in that unit have the benefit of cover. That's decent. You know, that's decent for Wraith constructs. Now, the problem with that, I think, is that within 18 rule, but, you know, it is what it is. By the way, Wraith constructs can no longer be taken in squads of 10 anyway, so it's going to be easier to get cover for your Wraith units for the most part. I don't know how good Rune of Mists is, but, you know, if it's cheap, it's something you can definitely put on a Spirit Seer. Higher Duty is the last one. This is, in my opinion, the best one. Spirit Seer model only. Once per turn, when an enemy unit ends a normal, advance, or fallback move within 9 inches of the bearer's unit can make a normal move of up to 6. Which is really good, guys. I mean, that's just like Spirit Seer and Wraith Guard get to just move 6 inches back, right? If it protects them against assault, you can also use it to screen your Wraith Guard better. You know, you can block charge lanes and stuff like that with them. Really good. Higher Duty is Chef's Kiss for this detachment for the enhancements. Let's go ahead and look at the stratagems. So we have the Seer's Eye, your shooting phase or fight phase. 1 Aeldari Psyker model from your army, and 1 friendly Wraith construct unit within 12 that has not been selected to shoot or fight. Select 1 enemy unit visible to your Psyker model until the end of the phase. Each time a model in your Wraith construct unit makes an attack that targets an enemy unit, you can ignore any modifiers to the armor pen and or damage characteristics of that attack. That is really good. So any stratagems that say -1 damage, or any stratagems like Armor of Contempt that say, you know, +1 to my armor save or -1 to your AP, are ignored. That's pretty strong. Wraith Bone Armor is next, and this is really good, guys. So you select one Wraith Construct unit from your army, excluding Titanic units, so no Wraith Knights, that was selected as a target of one or more attacks. Till the end of the phase, each time an attack is allocated to a model in your unit, subtract 1 from the damage characteristic of that attack. That's really strong. So that's really good for Wraith Blades that want to survive on objectives. That's good for Wraith Guard and good for Wraith Lords. Blades from Beyond. Now this one is pretty insane, guys. This one is the fight phase. One Wraith Blades, Wraith Lord, or Wraith Knight unit from your army that has not been selected to fight. The Wraith Knight is where I'm like thinking, oh my god, this is really strong for 1 CP. Until the end of the phase, melee weapons equipped by models in your unit have the Devastating Wounds ability, and we know that the Wraith Knight now has a melee profile in its own datasheet, and it's really strong, guys. So using this on a Wraith Knight, really strong. Using it on Wraith Blades, really good as well. I think even on a Wraith Lord, it's pretty good, to be honest. Although I do think it's more powerful in the Wraith Knight, of course. Then we have Soul Bridge. This is 1 CP. Basically what it does, you target a Wraith Blade, Wraith Guard, or Wraith Lord's unit from your army and one Psyker model from your army. Until the start of the command phase, until the next command phase, your unit, Wraith Guard, Wraith Blades, Wraith Lord, is considered to be within 12 of your Psyker model for the purposes of Psychic Guidance and Spirit Guide abilities. So, of course, that's great. That means they're going to be able to use Battle Focus, even if they're outside of 12. That means they're going to be able to get the +1 to hit, even if they're outside of 12 as well. So that's really strong. Spirit Token is next, and I'll save you all the jargon here. This is just sticky objectives. You select one Wraith Blades or Wraith Guard unit from your army. You select an objective marker that they control, that unit's in range of, and you make it sticky. Crushing Strides is the last one. This is a this is in the charge phase, and this is a mortal wound ability. So Wraith Blades, Wraith Lord, or Wraith Knight unit from your army that end is just a charge move. And you select one unit within engagement range of that unit and roll a d6 for each Wraith Blade model in your unit. Roll 4d6 if your unit has the Wraith Lord keyword. So if it's a Wraith Lord, you roll 4d6. And it's 6d6 if your Wraith Knight charges in. And on a 3+, that enemy suffers 1 mortal wound for each, 3+ you roll. That's also really awesome, guys. So Wraith Knights are doing a ton of mortal damage on the charge. And then if you have another command point, they're getting devastating wounds on top of it. Wraith Knights, guys, with Ghost Glaives are back in this detachment. It's really strong. It's really good. And also, guys, Wraith Knights with Ghost Glaives can charge through walls. They can move through walls. They don't care about terrain. So we will talk about that a little later, but they're really good. All right, moving on to the Ghost of the Webway. This is the Quinn detachment. A lot of people were, looking at the GW reveals today, and they were like, oh man, that looks terrible. But it's not. It's actually really spicy, really good. So check this out. Acrobatic Onslaught. Each time a Harlequin model from your army makes a charge move, it can move through enemy models. Now, that's really good in and of itself, but there's also something else, right? There's also another rule that they get. They get flip belts back, guys, so we'll talk about that later. Troop units in your army also have battle line and have an OC characteristic of 2. Unfortunately, it's not +1, so, it's just 2. So if they do get battle shocked, it's 0. And you can include up to 3 of the following models in your army: Death Jesters, Shadow Seers, Troop Masters. I don't know why they put that in there, because I think you can do that anyway, but there you go. They're just putting it in there for the hell of it, I guess. Now, as far as the enhancements, they're pretty good as well. The Troop Master model gets a ability that basically does mortal wounds on charge. So each time the bearer's unit ends a charge move, select one enemy unit within engagement range. Then roll 1d6 for each model in the bearer's unit that is within engagement range of that enemy unit. For each 4+, the enemy suffers 1 mortal wound. By the way, Harlequins also just have devastating wounds base. So what you could do with this is you could move forward, you can chuck a grenade at the enemy unit, do some mortal wounds, then you can charge in, do more mortal wounds with this ability, with this enhancement, and then do devastating wounds. Harlequins are going to be ignoring a lot of armor, guys. We have the Masks of Secrets. It's a Harlequin model only. Every time a enemy unit, excluding monsters and vehicles within engagement range, falls back, they have to make a desperate escape test. So more mortal wounds, guys. When doing so, if that enemy unit is battle shocked, subtract 1 from each of those tests. Then we have the Murder's Jest. This is what is going to make the Death Jester relevant in this detachment again. So this enhancement basically makes it so that every time a Death Jester model targets a unit that is below half strength, each successful hit roll scores a critical hit. So that sustained hits 3 that it has is going to auto crit basically against units that are below half strength. That's really good. Mistweave, Shadow Seer model only. While leading the unit, models have the Infiltrator's ability. Also, Shadow Seers are way better now, guys. There's actually a point to taking Shadow Seers now. Okay, now, that's pretty good so far, but the stratagems are out of this world. They're really fun, really good. So the first one is Staged Death. This is probably the best one. You can only use it once per battle, but you can use it on any Harlequin character from your army that was just destroyed. And essentially what happens is, at the end of the phase, you set your model back up on the battlefield as close as possible to where it was destroyed, and not within engagement range of enemy units, with half its number of starting wounds. So guys, basically what happens here is you got a Solitaire in your army. That Solitaire is not going to die the first time it goes down. It's going to automatically get back up. It's going to fake its own death, and then it's going to get back up and shred things. That's really cool. We have the Hero's Fall. This is a fight on death ability on a 4-up, which is, again, this is really good. We need fights on death. So at the end of the phase, each time a model in your unit is destroyed, if that model is not fought, roll a d6 on a 4+, you fight with it. And again, Harlequins hit very hard now because they have dev wounds. So this is actually really good. And they have dev wounds base, by the way, not just with the Troop Master. Mocking Flight. Your movement phase just after a Harlequin's unit from your army falls back. Till the end of the turn, your unit is eligible to shoot and charge when it fell back. That's great. That's, feigned retreat, basically. Then we have Trickster's Retort. Your opponent's movement phase just after an enemy unit ends a normal move, advance, or fallback move. One troop that is within 9 inches of the enemy unit, you can make a normal move of up to 6. Again, really good. It makes Harlequins really hard to kind of lock down, and there's nothing that says that you can't get back into a transport with this. So there you go. And actually, if you combine this with the ability of course, the, Starweaver, basically all of your units can hop back in their transports, which is pretty insane. Okay. Next one is Bloody Dance. End of your opponent's charge phase. One Harlequin infantry or mounted unit from your army that is within 6 inches of one or more enemy units and would be eligible to declare a charge against one of those units if it were your charge phase. This is that Dark Angel stratagem, guys, but for 1 CP. Now your unit can declare a charge against one of those enemy units, and then you resolve that charge, but you don't get any charge bonuses. So you don't get to strike first, essentially. But this can still be really, really effective in the right circumstance. Lastly, we have Exit the Stage. End of your opponent's fight phase, you select one Quinn's unit from your army, you remove that unit from the battlefield and place it in strat reserve. So that's awesome as well. So yeah, Quinns are looking great too. I can't believe this. Every single detachment so far has been a big W for the Eldar. Everything looks absolutely fantastic. Let's move to the next one. Guardian Battle Host. I wasn't actually expecting a Guardian detachment, but we got it anyway, and it actually does look really fun. So the detachment rule, defend at all costs. Each time a Dire Avenger, Guardian, Support Weapon, or Warwalker model from your army makes an attack, if that model's unit and or the target are within range of one or more objective markers, add 1 to the hit roll. So yeah, every time you make an attack against something on an objective, add 1 to the hit roll. That's fantastic. That's great for Warwalkers. That's great for support weapons. Well, I guess not so much for support weapons, but it's good for Warwalkers, Dire Avengers, and Guardians for sure. Then you have the enhancements. Craftworld's Champion gives the bearer OC 5. It's okay. It's probably pretty cheap. So, but it is decent. We have Ethereal Pathway. It's basically you select up to 2 Guardian units from your army, and they get Infiltrators. That's strong, guys. Infiltrating Storm Guardians with sticky objectives. I'm just saying. I'm just saying. Infiltrating Storm Guardians with sticky objectives. Really good. Protector of the Paths. While the bearer is leading a Guardians unit or Dire Avengers unit, once per battle, you can select the target bearer's unit with the Fire Overwatch stratagem for 0 CP. But it doesn't stop there, guys. While resolving the stratagem, hits are scored on an unmodified roll of 4+ or a 5+ or a 4+ instead if the bearer's unit is within range of an objective marker you control. That's really good on Guardian Defenders if you just want to have a Guardian Defender unit back on your home objective and say, well, you're going to be overwatching a 4+ if you deep strike in my backlines. That's really good. Especially considering that you can put support weapons in Guardian Defender units now. So you can actually overwatch with a D cannon if you have line of sight, or overwatch with a Vibro cannon or a Shadow Weaver. Last one is the Breath of Vol. Azuriani model only, of course. While the bearer is leading a Storm Guardians unit, each time you roll to determine the number of flamer attacks, re-roll the result. Each time you make a damage roll for a model equipped with a Guardian Fusion Gun, re-roll the result. That is just so good. That is so good. I mean, I don't know how often you're going to use this, but check this out, right? You can have a Warlock in the Storm Guardian unit and a Farseer in the Storm Guardian unit. Or I guess an Autarch, right? It doesn't matter. And the Autarch is allowing them to reroll all their flamers attacks, reroll their damage rolls, and the Warlock can get something like the infiltrate ability, right? The ethereal pathway ability, so it can infiltrate up the battlefield. That's really good. And on top of that, the Autarch gives some other bonuses to the unit as well. That's really strong, guys. All right, let's take a look at the stratagems because they're also really good. Wording salvos. Your shooting or fight phase, you select one Dire Avenger or Guardians unit from your army, and until the end of the phase, each time a model in that unit makes an attack that targets an enemy unit within range of one or more objective markers, you can re-roll the wound roll. That's pretty massive. We have shield nodes. Your opponent's shooting phase or the fight phase just after an enemy unit has selected its targets. You select one Dire Avenger or Guardian unit from your army that was the target of those attacks. If your unit is within range of one or more objective markers, until the end of the phase, subtract 1 from the wound roll. That's also pretty good. So that's going to make your Guardians very survivable on objectives, and Dire Avengers as well. Then we have Vol's Vengeance. This one is interesting. So it's right after something destroys a Dire Avenger or Guardians unit from your army. You select one Warwalker's unit from your army, and then after the enemy unit is finished making its attacks, your unit can shoot as if it's the shooting phase, but it has to target the enemy that killed that unit, and only if it's an eligible target. So obviously you can't shoot out of line of sight or something like that. You can use this stratagem once per battle round as well. So it's your opponent's shooting phase or the fight phase. That's pretty good. Just imagine a Dreadnought charging into a Dire Avenger unit, killing it, and then basically getting shot by 4 Bright Lances as a result. Vol's Vengeance is very good, and it's going to require your opponent to think deeply about what they want to charge. Time to Strike is also really good. Basically, it's just an auto advance 6 inches, right? You add 6 to the move characteristic instead of making an advance roll. And when you do so, you can shoot and declare a charge in the turn in which it advanced. It's only on Storm Guardians, but my God, it makes Storm Guardians really strong. We have the Blades of Zurian, shooting phase, one Dire Avenger Guardians unit. Until the end of the phase, ranged weapons equipped by models in your unit have the pistol ability. So yeah, you can shoot your Avenger Shuriken catapults or your fusion guns and flamers in combat. That's really strong. I haven't seen a weak detachment yet. It's kind of insane. Whoever worked on this codex just loves the Eldar as much as I do. Cost of Victory. This one's cool as well. You're probably only going to use it once per battle, though, because of the Pry Nexus restrictions, but here we go. End of your opponent's fight phase, one Guardian unit from your army. If your unit is not within engagement range of one or more enemy units, remove it from the battlefield and place it into Strat Reserve. When doing so, return every destroyed Guardian model to your unit. So your Guardian unit takes a bunch of damage with shooting. It gets back to safety, and then it has like maybe 3 models left in it. All you have to do is put it back into reserves, and then it comes back with the destroyed models still there. So Obviously, though, this also means that the characters, if they're still alive, will also still be part of the unit. This is really good, guys. This is really good. Basically, what happens, I guess, is your Guardians go back to the webway, they replenish their Guardian numbers and go back. That's awesome. Guardian Battle Host looks super fun for Guardians, and I can easily see people running like 40 Guardians in this Battle Host. Also, though, you're going to need Warwalkers. You're going to need multiple squads of Warwalkers in this as well. Really cool detachment. I'm really excited for it. Let's look at the next one, is the Aspect Host. So we went over most of this, so we're not going to go over all of it. But, excuse me. We are going to go over the enhancements that we haven't gone over yet. So, Aspect of Murder, Autarch or Autarch Wayleaper model only. Add 1 to the damage characteristic of melee weapons equipped by the bearer, and those weapons have the precision ability. So, I mean, guys, that means damage 3, I believe it's damage 3, Howling Banshee Blade, or damage 4, Starglaive, or damage 2, Striking Scorpion Sword. Pretty awesome. Mantle of Wisdom, Autarch or Wayleaper model only. While it's leading an Aspect Warriors unit, each time that unit is selected to shoot and fight until the end of the phase, models in that unit gain both the abilities from the Path of the Warrior detachment rule. So not only are you rerolling hits of 1, you're rerolling wounds of 1 as well. God, I've never seen anything more insane on Dire Avengers. Excuse me. We have the Shimmerstone. This is basically -1 to wound for the unit. So this is a permanent fortune for an Aspect Warrior unit that is being led by an Autarch or Autarch Wayleaper. And lastly, we have the Strategic Savant, which is the objective control one that we talked about earlier in GW's reveal. Then we have the stratagems, and guys, these are great as well. I just don't know what detachment to pick. I'm going to have to play all of them for you guys and let you guys know. So the warrior focus, your shooting phase or fight phase, 1 Aspect Warrior or Avatar of Cain model. Until the end of the phase, each time a model makes an attack, you can ignore any modifiers to ballistic skill, weapon skill, strength, armor penetration, damage, or any modifiers to the hit roll. Wow. Basically, ignore all modifiers. So if you go up against Death Guard and they're like, oh, you're -1 to hit and you're -1 weapon skill and you're -1 strength and -1 toughness, you're like, I don't care. 1 CP, I ignore all your bullshit, and I'm going to still kill your unit with my Howling Banshees, or I'm still going to kill your unit with my Striking Scorpions. Really good. I love that. And then, of course, you can, stack that with other stuff as well. To their final breath, we read this already. It's Fight on Death on a 4+, but it's a 3+ if you spend a Shrine token on your Aspect Warriors. Skyborn Sanctuary is really good as well. It's kind of the same one as we've seen in the Warhost. End of the fight phase, 1 Azuriani model or unit from your army and 1 friendly transport that it's able to embark in. Then you could just embark within the transport, right, within 6. Really good for Assman and Dire Avengers. Doesn't say you can't do it, right? So you can deploy Assman out there with 10 Dire Avengers. You can shoot. You can scoot 6 inches with his ability, and then at the end of the fight phase, you can get back in the transport, and on top of that, you can use the fade back if someone decides to shoot at the Wave Serpent and just get out of line of sight. Guys, my God, I'm in love with the Assman. Doom Inescapable is the next one. Your shooting phase, this is 1 Avatar of Cain unit. I haven't read this yet, so this is new for me. Effect, until the end of the phase, your model's Wailing Doom ranged weapon has a range characteristic of 18 and damage of 8. Holy crap. So this thing just has straight up damage 8. This thing can one-shot knights if it gets its sustained hit. So if you roll a 6 to hit, guys, which, there's a good chance you will if you miss the first time, right? Like there's a 16% chance that you just hit with damage 8. Oh my God, in range 18. That's really strong. Whew, man. All right, we have Preternatural Precision. We read this already. It gives ignores cover lethal hits or sustained hits to your unit when they shoot. But if you choose to spend an Aspect Shrine token, they get 2 of the abilities. Now, Dire Avengers don't have lethal hits anymore, so this would be really good on Dire Avengers, right? You spend the token, With the Zerman's unit, by the way, if it's a unit of 10, you get 2 tokens. So you get to use it twice per game. And then you get to basically, get lethal hits and sustained hits. And if you're within half range, you already get sustained hits, so you could go ignore cover if you want. That's really strong. Last one, Kane's Vengeance. Your opponent's moon phase just after an enemy unit falls back. One aspect warrior or avatar of Kane model from your army that was within engagement range of that enemy unit. All models in the enemy unit must take a desperate escape test. That's also pretty good. That's just something that's like, all right, if you fall back from me, I'm going to go ahead and just do, I'm just going to kill you with desperate escape tests. So yeah, Aspect Host, really powerful. I can't believe I'm saying this, but I'm so glad I picked up those Dire Avengers. Oh my God, guys. Dire Avengers and Ass Man. And by the way, I'm not going to show it in this video, but the Combat Patrol has been leaked. It's basically exactly what Valrock said it was going to be. It's 5 Dire Avengers, it's 5 Wraithguard or Wraith Blades, it's a Spirit Seer, and it is 5 Warp Spiders. So if you guys want Warp Spiders, they're in the Battle Force now, or they're in the Combat Patrol, excuse me. So, you have access to those models outside of just buying them separately, and I definitely would wait for that. Okay, we're done with the detachments. We have the point values. These are going to obviously change, but a couple of the standouts to me are the Vibro Cannon and Shadow Weaver are just 50 points. They're super cheap. The D Cannon is 110 points, but it seems like they took off some points for the lack of fate dice and stuff like that. So that's really cool. We have models that can be taken in up to 2 units. Warwalkers are 95 points. Looks like all the stuff that was more expensive because of the Brightlands tax is cheaper now. We do have a couple of more expensive things though, because they got way better. Like, for example, Fire Dragons are now 100 points. Well, they should be. They re-roll everything, right? And we'll go over their detachment later. Dark Reapers are the same cost, but Dark Reapers did get an improvement. The Crimson Hunter is exactly this. I think it's like 5 points more, but again, it got an improvement. Unfortunately, somebody in my Discord will be upset. The Hemlock Wraith Fighter is still garbage. It's still 155 and it didn't get any buffs. So it's garbage still. It's probably going to be good in the Seer Council detachment as a fun unit, but nothing more. The Wraith Knight with the Ghostglaive is 395. The Wraith Knight with the 2 ranged weapons is 435. So both of those units got decreased in points. Wraithguard and Wraith Blades are both 170, but you can't take them in units of 10 anymore. Windriders are the same cost, but you can't take it in a unit of 9. The Wave Serpent is 120, but the Wave Serpent got buffed. So Wave Serpents are better now, confirmed. Warp Spiders, we were worried about Warp Spiders being super expensive. They're 85 points. They're cheap. Warlock Skyrunners are 45 points. They got cheaper. The Warlock Conclave is cheaper. It's only 55 points for 2 models now. A single Warlock is still 45 points for some reason. I don't know why, but maybe that'll go down when they change the points. And what else is a standout to me? Well, honestly, I mean, most of the stuff we expect to be cheap is cheap, right? Swooping Hawks are only 75 points. I'll talk about Swooping Hawks a little later in the video. I think they're one of the very few disappointments of the Codex. Moggen Raw, 120. Azurman, 120. Guess how much Lycus is, guys? 120. She'll probably get changed to like 150. She's really powerful, but right now she's not that expensive. We have Jane Czar's 110. Howling Banshees are 85 points, but they're way better against certain things. It's just, yeah, you guys can, pause the video, take a look at the points cost and stuff like that. A lot of stuff got cheaper that was more expensive. And the stuff that did get more expensive is just straight up so much better that it doesn't matter. We have the Ynnari units, and the cost of the Ynnari units is a little bit suspect. I mean, the Raider being 80 points is kind of weird. Well, actually, no, I think it's 80 points now, so it's not that big of a deal. We have Reavers that are 60 points, so they're a little cheaper, but again, these things might change. The Yinkarn is 250, so the Yinkarn did get decreased by 100 points, so it got way worse, but it also got decreased. Now, if you look at some of the enhancement costs, some of them are really good, but they're really powerful, right? Like, we were looking at the higher duty Spirit Conclave ability that gives a 6-inch movement. That's 35 points, but it's well worth it, right? Because it's so powerful. A 6-inch move after something moves within 9 inches, holy crap, that's good, right? So yeah, go ahead and again, look at those points. I'm not going to go through all of them, but they look pretty good. And the Phoenix Gem is weirdly, and I know you guys are going to be weirded out by this as well, it's only 10 points. I don't know why it's only 10 points, but it's only 10 points. So there you go. That's like an auto include, I guess, in Warhost, if they don't change that. God, that's just funny to me. A 10-point Phoenix Gem. Could you imagine? Yeah, anyway, wild. Okay, let's go ahead and let's take a look at some of the data sheets, guys. So let's start with the Skyweavers. The Skyweavers don't have that stupid mortal wound ability anymore. They now just have -1 to hit. So they have stealth basically at all times, even in combat. Really good. As far as their stats, nothing has changed except for one thing, which is their Zephyr Glaives got a buff. So instead of being, I don't know what were they before? Strength 5 AP -1. Now they are Strength 6 AP -2. So they're much better in combat than they were before, and there's actually a good argument to take the Zephyr Glaives over the Star Bolus. The Haywire Cannons are exactly the same, and otherwise they work exactly as they did before. The Void Weaver got a glow up, guys. It is now a lone op outside of 18. So range attacks cannot target it outside of 18. You have to be within 18 to actually target the Void Weaver. Other than that, it looks exactly the same. The Prismatic Cannon looks exactly the same, and its little Pulse Blast, Disperse Blast, looks exactly the same. So there's no changes there. Obviously, it's not a high damage unit, but having 18-inch lone op is pretty useful. So that is going to be very good. And it also has stealth. So it just has built-in stealth. Instead of having smoke like it did before, smoke keyword, it has just pure up, straight up stealth. Starweaver is basically the same. The Shuriken Cannons, of course, have lethal hits now, but otherwise it's the same thing. Harlequin units within 6 inches can jump back into it at the end of the fight phase. The Troop Master got better. So the Troop Master has Choreographer of War that gives them a 6-inch consolidation move, which is, in addition to battle focus. So he gets a free, basically, battle focus ability. And on top of that, each time that model, so each time the Troop Master makes an attack, you can reroll a hit roll of 1 and add 1 to the wound roll. That's really good, right? The Troop Master is hitting pretty hard with the Troop Master's Blade, which has devastating wounds and Strength 5 AP -2, damage 2. Pretty damn good. His Harlequin special weapon as well is damage 2 also, and he has 6 attacks with it. I would probably go with the Troop Master's Blade still, though, because it just seems better to me. He can still take a Fusion Pistol, and guess what, guys? Fusion Pistols are damage D6 again. They are damage D6 again with Melta 2. So they're really good again. All right, let's look at the troop itself. Somebody, cough, cough, Exile Wargaming, is going to be really happy about this. And a lot of Harlequin players are going to be extremely happy. I know Crits on our Discord is going to be happy. Shout out to him. He's been wanting good Harlequins for a long time. Let's take a look. So their stats of their weapons have gotten better. So the Harlequin's Blade, just all of their melee weapons have base dev wounds. The Power Sword is going to be, basically the same, but it's going to have dev wounds. The Harlequin special weapon is going to be the same. It's going to be, attacks 4, strength 4, AP -1, damage 1, but dev wounds. So they are going to hit a lot harder. The fusion pistols, like I said, are a lot better. And the neuro disruptors are better too. 12 inches, hit on a 3+, strength 4, AP -2, damage 1, anti-infantry 2+. They finally have some AP. That's awesome. That's really good. Now, as for their ability, it's no longer +1 to wound. You get to choose one of them when they start the fight phase. It's not just when they charge. It's start of the fight phase. So the first one is going to be each time a model in the unit makes an attack, reroll a hit roll of 1. Each time the model, and the second one is each time the model makes an attack, add 1 to the wound roll. So they still have the wound roll thing, right? But it's just in every single fight phase now. It's not just when they charge. And then each time an attack targets this unit, subtract 1 from the hit roll. So if you want to just make it harder for yourself to get hit, you can also do that. Really good. Now, the cool thing also is the flip belts. Each time the bearer's unit makes a normal advance or fallback or charge move, ignore any vertical distances when determining how far they can move. That's really good for, moving around terrain. And that's about it. I mean, it doesn't actually allow them to move through enemy models, but remember, in the Harlequin detachment, when they make charge moves, they can move through enemy models. So that is pretty cool. But, what does the flip belt do then? Well, it allows you to move over obstacles and terrain pieces and stuff like that, where you would normally have to move over it instead. So, again, it's a free piece of war gear. It does something, and they didn't have that before, so that's pretty awesome. So the troop is looking good. Let's look at the Death Jester. Death Jester is basically the same. He did lose dev wounds on his shrinking cannon, so that kind of sucks. But he gained AP -2. So instead of AP -1, it's AP -2 now. He does have a flip belt. Oh, yes. So here's the thing. So unless otherwise stated, you cannot include more than one of these in your army. So unless you're in a Harlequin detachment, you can't have more than one. But he does force battle shock tests on units he hits at a -1. And instead of only one Death Jester being able to choose what ability they get, now all of them can do it. So if you are running a Quinn detachment, you can have 3 Death Jesters and they can all choose either Ignores Cover, Precision, or Sustained Hits 3. I don't know if you want to do that. I think probably just one Death Jester with that critical hit enhancement is good enough. But they are pretty cool. I do like Death Jesters. They are pretty cool. Okay. The Shadow Seer. Probably the biggest glow up of the Codex. From 0 to hero. First of all, it does have a Neurodisruptor, which is better. It has the Mist Stave, which is the psychic. It doesn't have a psychic shooting attack per se, but it has 2 psychic abilities. And basically one of them is a psychic shooting attack. So if you look at the Fog of Dreams, you get 18-inch lone ops. Your unit gets an 18-inch lone op, which is what I was calling for. Remember when I was saying this is what could fix it? That's awesome. And they have Treacherous Illusion, which is melee weapons equipped by enemy models have the hazardous ability while targeting this model's unit. Oh my god, right? That is really good. That makes, especially with fights on death, could you imagine how hard it is to be able to actually assault and do combat with a Shadow Seer unit now? Really good, really good. Shadow Seers are amazing now. I love them. I'm definitely going to have to run one now, and I'm probably going to have to find one on eBay. Hopefully somebody who doesn't know about the leaks, you know what I mean? All right, so now we have the Solitaire. The Solitaire is exactly the same. He did gain a wound, but he lost a point of invulnerable save. That's it. He's essentially exactly the same. He still has his, normal stuff, but he does also have the flip belt. So there it is. And that's it, right? He has stealth. He has fights first. He's a lone operative. He has precision. And that's the Solitaire for you. He does get +2 inches, though, for battle focus. So, he did get a little better, I think, overall because of the army rule. Okay, now let's look at the Ynnari stuff. We have the Vizark. The Vizark guys got better. I'm just going to say this. He got better. He got a glow up. He is better now. His weapon now has 3 modes. Sustained hits 2 with 8 attacks. Strength 4, AP -1, damage 1. Or Duelist stance, which has dev wounds and precision, which is strength 5, AP -2, damage 2, with 6 attacks. But now he has the Mythic stance, which has anti-epic hero 2+ and precision, which is awesome. And you get 4 attacks, hitting on 2s, strength 3, but again, anti-hero 2+, AP -4, and damage 3. Now, he doesn't get dev wounds with this, but it's insanely high AP, so it's really good still. Okay, now the other cool thing is he can join your Vrain. If he does join your Vrain, she gains a 4+ feel no pain, which is okay. But honestly, I think he's probably better by himself in his own unit of Incubi because he has the Wave the Blade, which gives them fights first. So people were saying, oh, I think the Ynnari detachment kind of sucks and everything. Well, I think a great way to actually run the Ynnari detachment is with a couple of big units of Incubi on foot because of all the bonus movement they can get. And also, they're just really fast. right? They're just super fast, and because you have battle focus, you can become immune to Overwatch. So that's really strong as well. So yeah, the Vizark is really good, guys. The Ynnari, we talked about the Ynnari. The Ynnari sucks now. Not great, but a lot cheaper. 350 to 250. So there you go. It's a cheap monster. I still don't think it's that good, but it's I think good in the Ynnari detachment, and it's not good anywhere else. Yvraine, let's talk about her. We talked about her a little bit before. She does dev wounds on her weapon, which is good. She gets to reroll wound rolls, of course. She gets some bonuses with the Vizark, but they don't need to be in the same unit anymore. The Vizark can kind of be on his own, giving fights first to some incubi. And she can be with a smaller unit of incubi in a transport if she wants to. Everything about her is basically the same, except she lost Feel No Pain 5+ for a unit, and instead she gets to revive on a 2+ revive D3+1 models, and she gets to reroll wound rolls against, her unit gets to reroll wound rolls against the unit they're fighting. Okay, let's move on. We have Ynnari units. So we have Ynnari witches. They are exactly the same as Drukhari witches. No difference. When an enemy unit falls back, they have to take a desperate escape test. That's it. Other than that, they kind of suck. They do have battle focus though, and that's not bad. Being able to be targeted with battle focus is good. We have the Ynnari incubi, and they're exactly the same as well. They make the enemy take a battle shock test, which isn't as good in Ynnari, but still decent. And other than that, they're exactly the same. Their damage has not changed one bit. They still have strength 4, AP -2, damage 2 weapons. So there you go. They do have battle focus though, which does make them a little bit faster. And guys, by the way, I know their faction keyword is Ynnari, but they are part of an Azerani army, so they still get battle focus, okay? There is no such thing as a Harlequin army or a Ynnari army. It's just the faction keyword is Ynnari, so you still get battle focus. Obviously, if they didn't get it, they wouldn't have the faction ability, battle focus, right? Abilities, battle focus. So you definitely get battle focus. Okay. Ynnari Reavers are exactly the same. There's no changes there. They get the eviscerating flyby, which is the mortal wound ability, right? They're exactly the same as they are in the Dark Eldar book. They're just an objective unit, I think. They're just there to score objectives. They're a little faster than normal stuff at movement 16. Again, they have battle focus though, so they can actually move up to 18 inches with the swift, with the swift stride ability or whatever. So yeah, Reavers are pretty good in this detachment, I think. Okay, looking at the Ynnari Archon, it's exactly the same as normal Archon in the Dark Eldar book, but it has battle focus, and it also gets to reroll wound rolls of 1 for the unit. And if it's below its starting strength, the unit that it's with, it gets to reroll all wound rolls. So instead of the pain token thing, instead of like giving it a pain token and rerolling all wound rolls, if it's under starting strength, it gets to reroll all wound rolls. It's not as good, but you don't have to spend pain tokens for it. So there you go. Reborn Mastermind is the basically opposite of Evectability. If you target your unit with a stratagem, you can reduce its CP cost by 1. So this is a good way because Ynnari can't have access to Eldrad. This is a good way of reducing CP. Also, Ynnari can now have Autarchs. So Autarchs can also do the same thing for their units. We have the Ynnari Succubus, which gives a unit of witches fights first. If they're under starting strength, unfortunately, not all the time. So that's kind of crappy. And sustained hits 1. I think this is the loser of the Ynnari. The witches look awful. I don't know how to make them more. I think definitely go with the incubi because the witches just look terrible in Ynnari right now. They're way too fragile. Then we have the Ynnari Coblite Warriors. They have sticky objectives, even if they're in transports. They have battle focus, and they have all the normal weapons that they have. I think they're still pretty good. Obviously not as good as before with Blade Storm, where you had AP -2 weapons, but they're still pretty decent. Anti-infantry 3+ weapons is pretty good. So we have the Coblite Warriors as well. Ynnari Raider is exactly the same as a normal Raider. It auto advances 6 inches, has firing deck 11. So, there we go. And it can also transport Yvraine and the Vizark now. So if you want Yvraine and 10 incubi in this thing, they can go in it, right? Because it's transport capacity is 11. You can't have both Yvrain and the Vizarch in the same unit, but I would actually kind of argue that they're better alone. They make a better trading unit when they're alone. Then we have the Ynnari Venom, which is exactly the same as the Dark Eldar Venom. You basically get to hop back in, and they can also split units of Ynnari Witches and Ynnari Kabalite Warriors as well. So yeah, Venom exactly the same. Venom is still good. You know, the Splinter Cannon still has sustained hits 1. It's not a lethal hits anymore, like the, like the Shuriken Cannon. So yeah, you're going to need transports in your Ynnari list, and these are still pretty solid transports. Then we have the Avatar of Khaine. The Avatar of Khaine, guys, he was nerfed, okay? He used to be toughness 12, now he's toughness 10. However, keep in mind that even though he got nerfed and stuff, he's a lot faster now with battle focus and stuff like that. And in the aspect detachment, he's actually quite powerful. I think that's probably why they nerfed him. Molten Form, he still has the damage characteristic of attacks, and his Bloody Handed Aura still gives +1 to advance and charge rolls made for units within 6. So he's still really good, guys. He's just slightly worse, and I think he's slightly cheaper as well. Correct me if I'm wrong, but I think they have him listed at 315, I believe. So he is cheaper in the Codex as of now. Okay, we went over the Farseer, right? Has Guide, has Branching Fates. Confirmed Branching Fates can be used on Guardian weapon platforms, just not on support weapon platforms. Support weapon platforms can now join Guardian units, which is amazing. Farseer Skyrunners. And by the way, the reason why it's amazing, guys, is because support weapons are really squishy and Guardians are able to soak up wounds for that, so they're not as squishy. So there you go. That's why they're really good. Farseer Skyrunner is essentially the same, except now it has the ability Misfortune instead of Fortune. So you target an enemy unit, and that unit subtracts 1 from all of their wound rolls. So if that unit is normally wounding on 4s, it's now wounding everything on 5s. This is really good. Honestly, I mean, I think it's, it's not as good as Fortune, obviously, but it is good. It targets an enemy unit, and that unit can't really do good damage to the units in your army. So I think it's a pretty good debuff personally. And yeah, I think the Farseer is looking pretty good. Even the Skyrunner is looking pretty good. All right. Let's look at the next page here. We have the Autarchs. The Autarchs are very good as well. They can join any Aspect Warrior unit of their type. So Aspect Warriors on foot can be joined by the Autarch. Aspect Warriors that fly can be joined by the Wayleaper. They have the Superlative Strategist ability, or at least the Autarch on foot has Superlative Strategist. When you use an Agile maneuver, you can reroll the advance roll made for that unit, and you can reroll any rolls that you need to make for the Agile maneuvers. So if you, need a unit to really get behind that wall and you roll a 1, with an Autarch you can reroll it, which is really good. And then you have the Path of Command. So when you use a stratagem on his unit, you can reduce the CP cost by 1, which is really good as well. So yeah, Autarchs, they don't get a CP per turn, but they reduce the cost of that unit. Okay. Autarch Wayleapers are exactly the same thing, except instead of rerolling advance rolls and the Agile maneuvers, they basically, on a 3+, when you use an Agile maneuver or when you spend a Battle Focus token on your unit, on a 3+, you gain 1 Battle Focus token back. So you get more Battle Focus tokens with the Wayleaper now. By the way, the Wayleaper is really cheap now, just like the Autarch. They're not expensive, so, they're a little bit better costed, I think. Now, what you might also notice, though, is that neither model has the devastating wounds that you get from the Mana Blasters or the Banshee Mask ability. That is determined solely off of what unit they can join. So, Wayleapers get Deep Strike because the units they join have Deep Strike. And the Autarch on foot, if it joins Howling Banshees, it gets Fights first. And if it joins Striking Scorpions, it has the Infiltrators, Scout 7, and Stealth abilities. So, yeah, unfortunately, no more giving anything Fights first. I think that would probably be kind of busted, if to be honest. You know, imagine a unit of striking scorpions having just fights first as well. I think that would be kind of busted. So yeah, they got rid of it. So as for now, it might actually be to some people's benefit because they built the model in a certain way, but Manda Blasters and Howling Banshee Mask don't really matter anymore. It's about what unit you join. Okay. Oh, and by the way, the Reaper launcher did get a glow up. We will talk about Reapers in just a second. Okay, we talked about Eldrad, we talked about Baharoth and Azurman. Azurman gets that move, shoot, move ability of 6 inches, and once per game, he has damage 3 on his ranged weapons, anti-infantry 3+, and dev wounds, which is insane. That's an insane mini feat. Eldrad gives you command points, just like, you know, Autarch used to do, and he has Doom, which is +1 to wound. And Baharoth, he cloud strikes deep. He has a 6-inch deep strike ability. They're gonna nerf that, obviously, from 3 inches. And he gets a critical hit on a 5+ with his ranged attacks, basically, on, you know, when he makes ranged attacks. So here's what it is. Okay, so it's Cry of the Wind. Each time the model, we couldn't see the full thing the other day, but each time the model uses Deep Strike or comes from reserves, each time the model makes a range attack, a successful unmodified hit roll scores a critical hit. So he just crits on a 2+. So when he comes in, he's basically in an Aspect Warrior detachment going to be critting every single hit. So he's going to be attacking 4 times, and it's going to be just 4 wounds. Boom. Right? That's pretty good. So yeah, Baharoth is a little bit better than I expected. I thought it was a critical hit on a 5, but it's not. It's any hit roll. Okay, Fuegan, Janezar, Lycus, Maugan Ra. We did talk about Fuegan and Lycus. They're really good, but we didn't talk about Janezar and Maugan Ra. So, Janezar has the Whirling Death. She gives her unit a 6-inch advance. And by the way, Howling Banshees do have advance and charge. So, auto 6-inch advance that you can charge afterward, right? So it says, makes an advance move. Ignore any vertical distance when determining the distance model moved as well. That's really strong. Now they can't, I don't think they can shoot in advance, but they can definitely advance and charge with the Howling Banshee ability. Storm of Silence. Each time a model makes an attack that targets a character unit, you can reroll the wound roll. So if a unit has a character in it, Janezar and Howling Banshees get to reroll wounds, and they have anti-infantry 3+ now. Janezar is awesome. She's awesome. She does a ton of damage. Plus, she has anti-infantry 3+ herself. She has 8 attacks, hitting on 2s, strength 6, AP -3, damage 2. She is a whirlwind of destruction. And of course, she has fights first. Lycus. Oh, we talked about Lycus. She's awesome. Maugan Ra. Harvester of Souls. When you shoot a unit, if all of your attacks from your Dark Reaper unit go into the same unit, you roll a d6 for each enemy unit within 3 inches of the target. And on a 5+, they're struck with shrapnel and they suffer D3 mortal wounds. So it's basically Deadly Demise D3 against units within 3 of their target, which is pretty good. Personally, he does also have dev wounds and ignore cover on his weapon. It's a 36-inch range, pretty decent ranged weapon, to be honest. And then his melee capabilities are pretty good as well. He also has the Face of Death. When he shoots something, they have to take a battle shock test and they have to subtract 1 from it. Maugan Ra is definitely better than he was before. Is he one of the best Phoenix Lords? Probably not. Probably not, but still pretty cool. I like him, and I personally think his ability is awesome. So there you go. Exploding shuriken catapults. Exploding shuriken cannons. Awesome. Okay, let's look at the next page here. We have Warp Spiders and Dark Reapers. We saw Warp Spiders already, but they are kind of looking better with their new points cost of 85. We'll see how that changes. Regular Dark Reapers are looking pretty much the same. They have inescapable accuracy still, so they can ignore all modifiers to the hit roll and ballistic seal modifiers. But here's the thing. Their weapons have gotten better. So they have 2 different profiles. The Star Shot, which is the single shot, is a single shot hitting on 3s, strength 10 now instead of strength 8, AP -2 and damage 3. Dark Reapers are getting their good guns back, guys. And the Star Swarm is going to be 2 attacks, hitting on 3, strength 5, AP -2, damage. I believe it's damage 1. I can't really see it there, but I believe it is damage 1. Still pretty good. But if it's damage 2, that's also really amazing as well. The Tempest launcher is exactly the same. Nothing has changed with it. Indirect fire is not as good as it was. And I'm thinking if the Reapers are cheap enough, it might even just be worth it with battle focus and everything like that, which they do have, thank God, they do have battle focus. It might just be better for the Reapers to, simply just not worry about their indirect fire abilities and just fight directly. Because, the Reaper launcher is much better, and of course the missile launcher is pretty good as well. Okay. Oh, yeah, and of course, they get their aspect shrine thing, right? So, they can do some pretty good damage. And by the way, confirmed, all aspect warriors can be taken in squads of 10. Fire dragons and howling banshees. Here we go, guys. Fire dragons, assured destruction. They reroll hits, wounds, and damage rolls against monsters and vehicles. Perfect. They have the aspect shrine token, of course, and they're really good in the aspect host. But as far as their ranged weapons go, they don't have range 18 except if they're with Fuegan. But the Dragon Fusion Gun is still good. It's still the same weapon profile. The Dragon's Breath Flamer is still awful. Fire Dragons do not get Flamers. GW lied to us on that one. But the Dragons, or the Fire Pike, is really good. Range 18, strength 12, basically the same thing, melt to 3. Now, if I'm not mistaken, I can't really read this clearly, but I think the Dragon's Fusion Gun, or the Exarch's Dragon's Fusion Gun, has melt to 6. So, yeah, it does more damage than the Fire Pike even, but it does have that range 12. I think you probably want to go with the Exarch's Dragon Fusion Gun, maybe. Of course, GW is going to do that, so you can buy the new kit, right? By the way, guys, when you're buying these new kits, invest in magnets. Magnetize the weapons of your models. I guarantee you it's going to be worth it. Okay, so Fire Dragons are looking amazing. Even at 100 points, they're looking absolutely tops. We got Howling Banshees next. Howling Banshees did get changed quite a bit. They do have fights first. They have the same basic profile, but their ranged, okay, not the ranged weapon. The ranged weapon kind of stayed the same, but everything basically gained anti-infantry 3+. Now, the trade-off here is they get less attacks, so they do get anti-infantry 3+, but they have 2 attacks each. It seems like they hit on a 2+, is what I'm seeing. Yeah, everything's hitting on a 2+ instead, and they get strength 4, AP -2, damage 2. Okay, so here's the thing about that. They're doing much more damage against Space Marines. So against the targets that they want to hit usually, they're doing much better. They hit a lot harder, even with the, less attacks. They're hitting more reliably with the 2+. And remember, in the aspect host, they get a reroll once they hit. And they also have damage 2. Now, they don't have as much AP, though. That's the trade-off. They can also advance and charge. So they can charge in a turn in which they advance or fell back still, and they still have fights first. So guys, Banshees are great, okay? Banshees are amazing again. On charge, they will on average kill a unit of Space Marines, right? They're forcing them to a 5-up save. They're hitting on a 2+, rerolling 1s in the aspect detachment. Even outside of the aspect detachment, they're hitting on 2+. They're wounding on a 3+. And then they're just killing on a 5. Like, anything but a 5, they kill. So they're really good. Also, the Executioner, like the Exarch, is really good. Executioner gets 3 attacks, hitting on 2, strength 6, AP -3, damage 3. So that is really good. And then you have the Mirror Swords, which are still damage 2, but double the amount of attacks as normal. So I think probably you want to go with the Executioner. Just to me, that just seems like the better pick. It has more AP, and it can kill Terminators, which is really cool. But I still think either way, you can't go wrong. I think it's a great choice. And then you have the Triskelay, which has a range attack, and it has more attacks than the others, but of course, less strength. But remember, less strength, less AP, but it has anti-infantry 3+ to make up for it. So I think the weapons are just way more balanced than they once were. Banshees are back on the table. Brent is going to be very happy from Craftworld Eldar. He is going to be happy about the Banshees. Okay, Dire Avengers and Swooping Hawks. So Dire Avengers are basically, they lost lethal hits. They still have the same strength and AP, but they gained an attack. So they have more attacks on their Avengers Catapult, which just means more critical hits, guys. It just means more lethal hits. It means more sustained hits in the Aspect Warrior detachment. It's just going to be bonkers. It's going to be amazing. Other than that, basically nothing changed. The Dire Sword still sucks. The Power Glaive still sucks. They're slightly better than they were before. I think they gained an AP or something like that. But they're still terrible. The Shimmer Shield only gives the bearer 4+ invulnerable save, but they do have the Blade Storm ability when they make attacks within half range, which is really quite possible with a Zerman. They get sustained hits 1 base, so that's really strong as well. I'm thinking these guys in a unit of 10, they're going to get 2 Aspect Shrine tokens in a unit of 10. Assman is going to be really good with them too. Dire Avengers are looking to be the premier damage dealing unit in the Eldar Codex for killing infantry. Basically anything that's not a huge monster vehicle, these guys got you covered. Let's take a look at Swooping Hawks. Now, Swooping Hawks to me are the embarrassment of the Aspect Warriors, but they're a little bit cheaper. And of course, they're really just there for objectives anyway, so it's not that big of a deal. Their grenade pack ability is just in your movement phase, after they are set up on the battlefield or they end a normal move, they can use the ability. If they do, you select a unit within, I think it's like 8 or 9 inches of them. I actually think it's 8 inches. I just can't read it from here. Correct me if I'm wrong in the comments. You roll 1d6 for each Swooping Hawk model in the unit, and on every 4+, an enemy unit suffers a mortal wound. Now, the reason why this sucks, I think, is because you're probably only going to take a squad of 5. So you're only rolling 5 dice. And when you use the grenade stratagem, you're rolling 6. Yeah, you do have to spend CP on the grenade strat, but it specifically says here you can't use this and the grenade strat in the same turn. So that kind of sucks. However, if we look at the ranged weapons, it's like, oh, let's look at the ranged weapons. Well, it looks like the Exarch's Last Blaster and, the Hawk's Talon, still good. The Hawk's Talon doesn't have Assault for some reason, but it is a lot stronger. It has Strength 6, AP -2, damage 2, but only has, I think, if I'm reading correctly, it only has 2 attacks. So, yeah, I think the Exarch's Last Blaster is actually weirdly better with Strength 5, AP -1, damage 1. And then if we look at like the Sun Pistol's not great. You probably don't want to give the Hawk a power weapon. Like, you can't just give him a power weapon anymore. You have to give him the Sun Pistol as well. So you're probably better off just giving the Exarch's Last Blaster. You can give a Scatter Laser, which has sustained hits 1, but again, it's just, I don't know, it's not that good. I don't think it's that good. It doesn't have lethal hits. You probably want to go with the Exarch's Last Blaster and call it a day. I think that weapon options are interesting. I definitely think the Exarch is an interesting model, but the unit ability kind of fails them a little bit. They really do need to be used in a unit of 10 for this ability to be good. So I think if you're using a unit of 10, this ability actually pops off. Because I believe, if I'm not mistaken, yeah, you can get a max of 6 mortal wounds. So on average, you'll get about 5 with a squad of 10. That's not terrible. That's not terrible. It's just not super good, right? So yeah, I think this unit's okay, but in comparison to the other units, especially in the Aspect Host, I think just Dire Avengers are just straight up better in most cases. But I do like Swooping Hawks. Don't get me wrong. I do like them. I think they're good, but I just don't think they're as good as the other options. Okay, Shining Spears, guys. Holy crap, Shining Spears are good. So first of all, let's talk about just the fact that they have Battle Focus now is really good. They still have a 3+ save, which is great. 5+ base invul save, which isn't like amazing, but it's a little bit better because they're going to be able to, at least in the Windrider detachment, get some cool bonuses. They have this ability called Extreme Mobility. So each time they make a normal advance or fallback or charge move, ignore any vertical distance when determining the total distance of models in this unit can move. Now, this seems crappy because it's like, oh, well, they can't move over enemy models with this. But guys, they have fly. So they can move over enemy models with fly, but now they can actually ignore moving over ruins. So they just charge right through ruins, guys, with this ability. They charge right through ruins. They do not care. The Exarch still gets the 4+ Shimmer Shield. And check this out. Let's look at the melee weapons, ranged weapons. So their laser lances have assault. They're pretty good. They're 1 attack, hitting on 3, strength 6, AP -2, damage 3 now. Star Lance is the same thing, but with strength 9 and -3 AP. Now, check out the melee weapons. Their laser lances now have anti-monster, anti-vehicle. I believe it's 4+. No, I believe it's 3+. It's anti-vehicle, anti-monster 3+, and they have lance on top of that. So that's really strong. They also have damage 3 on their weapon profiles. They have strength 5, AP -2, which is really good. It's definitely an upgrade from strength 4. And then the Paragon Saber is, it's probably worse, to be honest, but it's better against Marines. And then you have the Star Lance, which is, anti-vehicle, anti-monster 3+, 4 attacks, strength 5, AP -3, and damage 3. It's a big boy. Okay. The Shining Spears, guys, are going to hit like trucks for their cost. I think they got increased to 120 again, but for 30 extra points, you're getting a ton of more damage. That's going to be great. These guys are now, once again, a damage dealing unit. They look really good. Okay, Striking Scorpions. Let's take a look at them. They gave us the Chain Sabers, guys, thank God. So first of all, the Chain Sabers, they get a pistol shot, which is like, okay, whatever, shuriken pistol. If you look at the melee weapons, the Biting Blade, I believe, has sustained hits 3. So they gave the Biting Blade sustained hits 3, attacks 4, weapon skill 3+, strength 5, AP minus. I want to say AP -2, but I could be wrong. Correct me from the comments if I'm just not looking at it correctly. And damage 1. So the damage went down, but it hits a lot harder against lighter targets. The Scorpion's Chainsword is now like kind of the option that you take. Or not Scorpion's Chainsword, sorry. The Scorpion's Claw is the option you take for Marines. 3 attacks, hitting on 3s, strength 8, AP -2, damage 2, so just solid damage in general. And then, of course, all the Scorpion Chainswords get sustained hits 1. Instead of dev wounds, they have -1 AP. So you're not going to get Manda Blasters in the same way anymore. But what Manda Blasters does now is every time you make a charge move, you get to crit on a 5+. So all of your sustained hits crits on 5s. So that Biting Blade with sustained hits 3 crits on 5s, which is pretty cool. So yeah, things are looking great for the Striking Scorpions. But guess what? It's not just their weapons that are good, right? Their weapons are fine, right? They shouldn't be able to kill Terminators, by the way. I think anybody who was like, oh, I'm going to miss their ability to kill Terminators. Okay, but they really shouldn't be fighting Terminators, right? That was really weird design choice on GW. However, they get Infiltrators and Scout 7 and Stealth. So they get a bunch of cool core rules, which is really awesome. So yeah, Striking Scorpions are looking very good with their, Infiltrator, Scout 7, and Stealth, Infiltrators and Scout 7, really good combo. And Stealth makes them a little tougher. So these guys are really good at dueling other units in the infiltration and stealth categories now. Okay, let's go ahead and also look at Warlocks. So Warlocks, they look pretty much the same. Their stats look the same. Their weapons look the same. They're still not going to be any good at combat. But what they do give you is the Runes of Fortune, which subtract 2 from charge rolls. And if they're nearby other Warlocks, they get a bonus to their damage for their ranged weapons. Now, personally, I actually think this sucks, but there's certain detachments that really, kind of require you to have Psychers in your list, like the Seer Council detachment, the Spirit Conclave detachment, really incentivize Psyker models. So Warlocks are your cheaper Psychers, and you're going to need them in your list. So you're probably going to need, a Warlock or 2 here or there with Guardians and stuff like that, just as a requirement. Right? Now, you have the Warlock Conclave, which is basically the same thing, except weirdly enough, it seems like the Warlock Conclave can also attach to Guardian Defenders and Storm Guardians. And instead of -2 to charge rolls, the unit gets -1 to wound. So, of course, the Farseer also has to be in the Guardian unit, but it seems to me like, having a permanent fortune on your Guardians is really good. Excuse me. But yeah, having a permanent, fortune on your Guardian unit is really good. You do have to pay a little bit more, but it's only 55 points, as we saw in the point costs. So it's not as bad as you think. And, you're getting the same stats out of it. You're not getting -2 to charge rolls, but you're getting, -1 to wound. So it's really good, guys. I think the Warlock Conclave, the 2 Warlocks, I recently just picked up some cheap Warlocks on eBay, and I'm glad I did, because it looks like the Conclave is back. Now, let's go ahead and take a look at the Skyrunners. The Skyrunners just give Windrider units. That's all they can join anyway. They give them Ignores cover, which is fine, but they don't give them stealth, so they don't have that option. And they have basically the same thing, the Psychic Communion, which gives you better strength on your, Destructor, and Singing Spear. I don't know. I don't really think that's that great. I think Warlock Skyrunners are a little bit worse than they were before. There's other things that can give you Ignores cover now, right? Like Shroud Runners can give you Ignores cover. So I just don't think it's that big of a deal to have. And by the way, if you guys hear something in the background, it's because I'm doing my laundry right now. It is what it is. I gotta do some chores at some point, right? Okay, so let's move on to the Wraith Knight. Now, the Wraith Knight is really good. Toughness 12, movement 12. So, Avatar of Cain, move over. As far as its ranged weapons go, the ranged weapons are still really good. Now, the heavy Wraith Cannon did lose Blast. So it doesn't have Blast anymore, but otherwise it's exactly the same. The Sun Cannon got Blast back. So the Sun Cannon has Blast. It's D6 plus 4 damage, or D6 plus 4 attacks, which is good. It was 2D6 before, but D6 plus 4 is just strictly better. Strength 10, AP -3, damage 3 is also better. So the Sun Cannon got a huge buff. The Star Cannons are still the same, which is unfortunate, but, there we go. You can take a Scatter Shield with this thing, and the Scatter Shield gives you a 4+ invulnerable save, and it also allows you to subtract 1 from the damage characteristic of the attacks that are going up against it. So, a Scatter Shield will make a Wraith Knight much tougher at the cost of offensive firepower. The Wraith Knight also has Battle Focus, so it could use some of the Battle Focus abilities, not all of them, but some of them. And it has the Titanic Strides. So basically exactly what Imperial Knights got, the Wraith Knight got. It can move over things that are 4 inches or less in height, including other models. It can make a normal, advance, or fallback move when it does so. It can move within engagement range of enemy models, but cannot end within engagement range of them. And of course, you can move through terrain features, but if you roll a 1, then it's battle shocked. So you can move through terrain features that are more than 4 inches of height, but you have to roll a d6, and on a 1 it's battle shocked, which kind of sucks. Means it can't be targeted with stratagems and things like that. Now, it also has a second rule, point blank devastation. Each time this model's heavy Wraith Cannon or Sun Cannon targets a unit within half range, you can re-roll. This is great. You can re-roll the dice to determine the number of attacks made, which is really strong. So the Wraith Knight, the shooting Wraith Knight is good, and the combat Wraith Knight's also good, because guess what the combat Wraith Knight gets to do? It just gets to move over enemy models, terrain features, whatever it wants to. It basically has super fly, so it could just move through without having to roll a dice or anything like that. And as we discussed previously, in the Spirit Conclave detachment, having a Titanic Ghostglaive, which has 15 attacks, with devastating wounds is absolutely insane, right? Rolling that many dev wounds is insane. And also, having 5 attacks at strength 18, AP -3, damage 6 is good as well. You can also just give it a Scatter Shield to make it even more durable. So if you just want it to be a melee powerhouse, you can do so. Really good option for the Wraith Knight. I think it's fantastic. So the Wraith Knight is great. Both options are good. And then we go on to Rangers, Shroud Runners, and Vipers. Rangers are exactly the same. Now, by the way, all of the Guardian type units got decreased to leadership 7, but that's okay. Rangers still have infiltrators. They still have stealth. They have the Path to the Outcast, which allows them to move D6. They seem to be pretty cheap as well. And, they're basically the same other than that. Nothing has changed. So yeah, Rangers, great objective scoring and screening unit. Shroud Runners did get their save reduced to a 4-up, but Scatter Lasers got boosted to sustained hits 1, and their target acquisition is now, instead of lethal hits, if they hit an enemy unit with their long rifles, which means they don't need to be close to enemy units anymore, right? They don't need to be sacrificing themselves to get lethal hits. That unit cannot have the benefit of cover. I honestly think that's great. I think that's a great trade. I think they're still really strong. Obviously, the save of 4+ didn't often help them anyway. At least it didn't help me. And, having the ability to just strip cover from anything 36 inches away is awesome. And it's a really good chance too, because guess what? They hit on a 2+ again. So their Ranger long rifles still hit on a 2+, and their scatter lasers, of course, are boosted. So yeah, Shroud Runners are looking good once more. Vipers are looking good. They have harassment fire. So essentially, when they hit an enemy unit, that unit is at -1 to hit. So every time that unit makes attacks for 1 round, they're at -1 to hit. That's also extremely good. They're extremely annoying. Tagging a vehicle with -1 to hit downrange with a Bright Lance, or hitting an infantry unit with a Bright Lance, or not even just a Bright Lance, right? Like hitting an infantry unit with their Shuriken Catapults or something like that is really, really good. So yeah, Vipers are looking good as well. Of course, they probably have to be a little, cheaper than they are now. Probably 75 points, what they were before, is a decent cost for them. But honestly, I'd say like 70 personally, but that's just me. Even at 75, I think they're still good. And yeah, Vipers are looking good as well. Let's talk about the Spirit Seer. So the Spirit Seer has the ability to be a lone op when within 3 inches of Wraith constructs. So they don't join units anymore. When they're around Wraiths, they just gain lone operative, which is way, way better than what they had. They have the Spirit Mark ability, which gives Wraith constructs sustained hits 1 against an enemy unit within 18 inches. So basically what you do is you target a Wraith unit within 6 inches of this model, and 1 enemy unit within, well, actually it just says visible, so I guess it's unlimited range, so you don't need to worry about range for that. But your Wraith units get sustained hits 1, which is really good. You also have Tears of Isho, which is a new psychic power. It automatically happens, and basically what it does, instead of the previous thing, which was just revive a Wraithguard or Wraith Blade model, you get to either revive a Wraith Blade or Wraithguard model, or basically heal D3 lost wounds to a Wraith unit. And there is no restriction on the Wraith Knight, guys. So yes, you can heal the Wraith Knight D3. So I think that's really cool. Now you can only target a unit with the ability once per turn though. So that is the trade-off. But yeah, Spirit Seers are looking good. I mean, obviously their combat's crap still, but yeah, they're looking good. Wraith Blades and Wraithguard, let's talk about them. They did get reduced to toughness 6, guys. Unfortunately, they're not as tough as before, but they do have a 2+ save still. They still have their 3 wounds. They did get decreased to leadership 8 when outside of Psychers. So when they're outside of 12 inches of friendly Psyker models, they do unfortunately hit on 4s, and they have a leadership characteristic of 8+. But when they're within 12 inches of a Psyker, which they probably always should be, they get the 6+ leadership, and they get +1 to their hit rolls. No more lethal hits though, but Wraith Blades, they get Fight on Death on a 3+, and Wraithguard get to shoot in a turn which they fell back. And also, by the way, guys, D-sights are now really good. They're now torrent weapons. So D-sights are torrent weapons. They're D6 attacks. They don't have to hit at all. They're strength 7, AP -3, damage 1. So, D-sights are actually good now, by the way. They're actually really powerful flamers. And remember, in the Spirit Host detachment, you can shoot something and then move back 6 inches. So you can overwatch them, do a bunch of overwatch damage with the D-sights and then move back 6 inches. They're really, really good now. And I mean, of course, the Wraith Cannons are still good as well, but they did lose dev wounds. So, yeah, I was wrong, guys. The heavy Wraith Cannon has dev wounds, but the regular Wraith Cannon lost it, so there you go. I think Wraith Guard are still good, but it's looking like, to me, the Wraith Cannon variant is a little bit weaker than before. Their damage did get increased, though. They have D6 plus 1 damage now on the Wraith Cannons instead of just D6. So, I guess there's some trade-offs there, right? Okay, let's move on to the next thing here, which is the weapon platforms, the support weapon platforms, and we have some good stuff here. So the weapon platforms can join Guardian Defender units. The D-Cannon platform has structural collapse. So by the way, same stats. It has blast, devastating wounds, indirect fire. But it does have a different ability. So each time the model makes an attack with a D-Cannon, reroll a damage roll of 1. If the attack targets a Titanic unit, reroll the damage roll instead. That's really good. D-Cannons are a little bit more expensive, but yeah, that's a really good ability. Shadow Weavers are probably my new favorite. Remember, they're only 50 points. Their weapon is not great. They don't have dev wounds or anything. They just have blast and indirect fire. 48 inches, D6 plus 2 attacks. Ballista skill 3+, strength 6, AP -1, damage 1. They will be hitting on 4s with indirect fire, but check this out. In your shooting phase, after this model is shot, select one enemy unit hit by one or more of these attacks with the Shadow Weaver until the start of your next turn. That enemy unit is snared. When an enemy unit is snared, each time that unit makes a normal, advance, or fallback move, roll 1d6 for each model in that unit, and for each one, that unit suffers 1 mortal wound. And guess what, guys? There's no cap on it. So against orcs, against 10-man units of anything, they're rolling 10 dice, they're rolling 20 dice. For every one, they're suffering a mortal wound, which is awesome for 50 points. I think, personally, the Shadow Weavers are going to be the meta for support weapons. I'm calling it now, guys. 3 Shadow Weavers, per army, and you're going to be, throwing out a bunch of mortal wounds on enemy units that try to move. It's going to be extremely annoying for opponents. Shadow Weavers are great. Let's talk about the Vibrator Cannons. So the Vibrator Cannons, they don't have indirect fire. I personally don't think they're good still, but they're way better than they were before. They are 50 points apiece. They're very cheap. They get D6 attacks, hitting on 3s, strength 9, AP -1, damage 2, I believe, for their base, or maybe AP -2. I just can't read that, but they have decent AP. They have Sonic Destruction, which means that for each other Vibro Cannon that hits the same unit, they get +1 strength, +1 damage, and +1 AP value, which is really good. It's really strong. They can actually do a lot of damage. I just think that it's going to be a little bit hard to use them, but I could be totally wrong on this. These guys could be really good. We'll just have to wait and see. All right, we're looking at Guardian Defenders and Storm Guardians, Warwalkers, and Windriders next. Guardian Defenders have that fleet of foot ability we talked about. Otherwise, they're pretty much exactly the same. The Shuriken Catapult has Assault. It's just the same weapon. Nothing changed. As for the Storm Guardians, they have sticky objectives. So again, same thing there. Nothing changed with their ranged weapons at all. They're exactly the same. Their Guardian close combat weapons are still awful. The Serpent Scale platform, I believe, does give them, it still gives them a 5+ invulnerable save, so there's still that. And you can still take 2 Flamers, 2 Fusion Guns, and 2 Power Swords. Looking at the Warwalkers, they're pretty good as well. They get a brand new ability. So they did get, 5+ invulnerable save now instead of 4+. They do not get the ability for -1 to wound, which is okay, but you can take them in units of 2, and their ability is crystalline targeting. So when you target an enemy unit, improve the AP characteristic of future attacks made against that unit by 1. And it says you can only use this ability once per turn. So each unit can only use this ability, can only be selected for this ability once per turn. That's still pretty good. I mean, I think Warwalkers are still solid. As long as they're cheap enough, I think, taking 4 Bright Lances, lighting up an enemy unit, and then giving other units -1 AP against it, is really strong. Let's look at our Windriders here. So our Windriders did get one less save, but they gained a 6+ invulnerable save. Shuriken cannons, scatter lasers are better now, so you have an improved weapons, and their swift demise ability also got better. They still have 3 attacks as well, so Windriders are still good in combat. Weirdly enough, you can't take them in squads of 9, but swift demise makes it so that you reroll hit rolls of 1. If the target is the closest target, doesn't need to be on an objective, you can reroll the hit roll instead. So that's just a better ability. So yeah, Windriders are still awesome, guys. If you have Windriders, by the way, guys, grab that combat patrol while you can, because it's going away soon and being replaced. Okay, let's take a look at the Wraith Lord. The Wraith Lord is toughness 10. So I believe, yeah, the Wraith Lord, I think, got nerfed to toughness 10 instead of toughness 11, which isn't that big of a deal on the Wraith Lord itself. It still has a 2+ save, still has 10 wounds, has the same options. And yeah, I believe everything else is pretty much the same on the damage front. However, Fated Hero is different. So at the start of the battle, you select one of the following keywords: infantry, monster, mounted, or vehicle. And each time the model makes an attack against a unit with that keyword, reroll a hit roll of 1 and reroll a wound roll of 1. That's really good. Also, remember Psychic Guidance. So Psychic Guidance for this gives you weapon skill. So actually, check this out. This is a little bit better. So they have Psychic Guidance from a Psyker model within 12 inches. Instead of just improving the hit roll by 1, you improve the ballistic skill and weapon skill characteristic of weapons equipped by this model by 1, and you increase your leadership as well. So here's what you do, guys. Obviously, you're still going to give it the 2 flamers. That's a no-brainer. Of course, they're going to have flamers. But you're going to be ballistic skill 3+, but this can also stack with guide. So if you're hitting a certain unit, you can actually be hitting on 2+ and re-rolling your hit roll of 1 and your wound roll of 1. So think about a model like this with 2 Bright Lances that's hitting on 2+, re-rolling 1s against a guided target, and you're re-rolling wound rolls of 1, wounding on a 3+. That, guys, is really, really good. This thing is good. I'm sorry to say, but it's great. The Wraith Lord got a significant glow up in terms of its damage. Now, looking at the Hemlock, it's exactly the same. Nothing has changed. It's still terrible, unfortunately. And that's it. The Hemlock sucks, unfortunately. So, I know a lot of people love it, but it's unfortunately still terrible. The Crimson Hunter, however, is pretty good. It's unchanged. All of its stuff looks exactly the same, as far as I can see, and it still gets +1 to hit against units that fly and +1 to wound. So there you go. Crimson Hunters are still good. And they're really good in the aspect detachment because they get to reroll 1s to hit or 1s to wound. Let's look at the Night Spinner and the Fire Prism last. The Night Spinner we talked about before. It sucks. It is a little bit cheaper than it was, but it's still not that cheap. So it's not going to be good, guys. Honestly, Shadow Weavers all the way for 50 points. Fire Prisms are also worse. Okay, so check this out. So the Disperse Shot didn't get any worse. It's the same thing. It does have Battle Focus, but unfortunately with the Linked Fire ability, if you choose to use Linked Fire, you only get to get 1 shot with your Prism Cannon. So your Focus Lances, half the number of shots that it gets when you use a linked fire. So that's really kind of awful for people running 3 prisms. If you're out there running 3 prisms, the linked fire ability is not that great. And I would even go so far as to say maybe you shouldn't even use it. I think it's really only decent sometimes. The weapon profile remained exactly the same. So yeah, prisms did get a nerf. They are cheaper though. They're only 155 points listed. But unfortunately, that I think just doesn't quite make up for it. So yeah, prisms are a little bit worse now, guys, unfortunately. All right, let's talk about Corsair Void Reavers. Guess what, guys? They're exactly the same. They're exactly the same models. So no changes with Corsair Void Reavers. No changes with Corsair Void Scarred either. Looks like they're exactly the same. The Falcon is exactly the same as well. Of course, the Shuriken Cannon has lethal hits now, but that's about it. The Wave Serpent, however, got a significant glow up. So the Wave Serpent now has the following. Wave Serpent shields. Each time a range attack targets this unit, if the strength characteristic is greater than the toughness characteristic, subtract 1 from the wound roll. It basically gets a lesser fortune permanently, which is awesome. It still gets a 5-up invulnerable save as well. It has that 13 wounds as well. And that is it. It is just really good, guys. It's awesome. It survives better. So it's, of course, going to be something that is used a lot more in games because it's tougher. And I really enjoyed this. I'm glad they got rid of the stupid Battle Shock D3 Mortal Wounds thing and just gave this thing more toughness. So yeah, Wave Serpents are good again, guys. They're awesome. And that is it. That is the review in its totality. Now, I do also want to go over the Ynnari detachment as well, but I think what I'm going to go ahead and do is do it in a separate video so we can talk about the Ynnari and have it as its own thing. So if you guys are interested in the Ynnari, I honestly think they're still good. They're just not... Unfortunately, though, a lot of people that bought the models for the Ynnari, the old Ynnari, with the Scourges and the Mandrakes and all that, they're going to have probably wasted their money unless they want to start Dark Eldar. So that is a kick in the balls for them. But it's not that bad. They're still a good faction. They're still good, guys. It's just, unfortunately, GW made you guys waste a lot of money, which is classic GW. You know, you got to hate GW for that. And that's why I'm saying, you know, don't directly support them, right? Buy from third-party retailers or buy from somebody else. Buy used. Or 3D print your models. But anyway, that's another story. The models still look cool, but yeah, it's a damn shame what happened there. So I will go over the Ynnari in another video. To all my patrons out there, thank you so much for supporting the channel and continuing to make the channel awesome. With your support, I will leave the link in the description for the Patreon. You can join for free. And if you want to, you know, get the channel Discord link, I have that up on my Patreon as well for free for you guys. You can, you know, join a free trial, get in there for free. We have a lot of Eldar players sharing the leaks, sharing tactics, sharing stuff like that in our Discord. I'm also an Amazon affiliate and have a channel store page. If you want to grab some discounted Eldar minis on Amazon, grab them while they last. If you want that old Combat Patrol, grab it while it lasts because it's not going to be around for long for a good price. And lastly, if you want to grab some Eldar inspired apparel, you have my channel store page, which has a lot of cool apparel on it. That's going to be it for today's video, guys. Thanks for watching. That's the whole codex. That's the leaks, pretty much. Have a good one. And I'll see you guys next time with more videos. We'll have more videos coming out today. See you later, guys, and peace out.